It's been a while since I did one of these, a double feature review. 2 movies, 1 video. Let's go. Let's start with the movie I saw first, Marriage Story. Written and directed by Noah Baumbach, it stars Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver. In Marriage Story, we follow the relationship of Charlie and Nicole, which is coming to an end. We see how the end of this relationship is affecting them, their family, and their friends. So this year, Netflix has released a few movies in theaters that are then later released on their streaming service. These movies were The Irishman, Marriage Story, and Dolomite Is My Name. I wasn't able to see Irishman and Dolomite in theaters, and Marriage Story was the last one showing in my area, so I thought, why not? Why not experience one of these movies in a theater? You know, the way it's really meant to be seen, even though it is coming to Netflix and it's made by Netflix, all movies I think are still worth seeing in theaters, or at least experiencing them on the big screen. So I went to a small theater, saw this movie, and I was honestly blown away. This was definitely one of the best of the year, and I just want to talk about it. Let's get into it. First of all, performances. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson destroyed this movie. They did amazing. They were able to balance the humor with the drama, and you really see how they're beginning to clash, and you really understand both of their perspectives. Now, I do think it leans a little more to one person's side. Like, I did kind of side with the one person a little more in the story, but you do get a sense of their perspectives on each side, and I think their performances really helped elevate that. These felt like very real people. There are also some really great supporting performances here. People I didn't even know were in the movie, like Wallace Shawn, who I haven't seen in a very long time, Ray Liotta, Laura Dern. These people really helped complement Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson's characters, but also they just were great on their own. They were funny, they were heartfelt, and I think they just really helped make this movie such a great experience. Another thing that really worked for me in this movie was how it was framed, the storytelling. In this movie, you see everything happening through the eyes of Nicole and Charlie. Every scene happens with them present, or it's what's directly happening to them. So in that case, it makes it very, very focused. So you don't get distracted by something else that's going on that's not necessarily related. This is very intentional, it's very focused, and it really gives you time to sit with these characters and get to know them and see all sides of the story. Along with the storytelling, there's great cinematography. This movie takes place in both New York and LA, and I think they really use these places to their advantage. Really, really beautiful sets, really nice color palette. And it also looked like either this was shot on film or they added the grain in post, but either way, I thought the grain looked really nice. Made me feel like I was watching a movie way back in the day, maybe even before I was born, but it did have that nostalgic feeling to it. Lastly, this was a very emotional movie. From seeing where Nicole and Charlie's relationship started to where it is now and how it's kind of changing, how they're both being hurt by the situation, it was just really an emotional ride. And also in this storytelling, they explore a lot of really in-depth themes. They talk about not just divorce, but also love in general, gender roles, gaslighting, these things that play into a relationship that could help it, hurt it. They really just go really in-depth, and it just is a heartbreaking experience. Now, I do think, even though there's a lot of parts that really hurt to watch, I think they do leave it at a place that you can be at peace with, and that's kind of how it is in real life too, especially in relationships where they end in divorce. It may not always be a happy ending because this is people separating, people that used to live together, that used to be married and in love. And so at first it'll be weird, and so they do explore that with this family and how it's changed them and how the separation is really gonna change the dynamics. But I do think they really did a great job of exploring all the themes, all of the emotional weight that this situation brings. The verdict. I think Marriage Story is solid. This was definitely one of my favorite movies of the year. Really, really great performances from Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson, and the supporting cast. Beautiful cinematography. Really, really in-depth exploration of these themes of separation, love, divorce. And it was really an emotional ride. And so this is a hard movie to watch, but I do think it's very necessary, and it does explore a lot of modern themes. So if you're looking for a really heartfelt, human movie, definitely check this one out. By the time I'm dropping this, video is on Netflix, so you can watch it right now. Next up, we have A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, directed by Marielle Heller and stars Matthew Rhys and Tom Hanks. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood tells the story of an investigative journalist who is given the task of interviewing and writing a piece on Mr. Rogers himself. This movie tells the story of the writing of this article called Can You Say Hero by Tom Janad. I saw the trailer for this movie and I thought, man, Tom Hanks is just out here collecting historical figure roles like they're Infinity Stones. He's been Captain Sully, he's been Captain Phillips, he's been Walt Disney, and now Mr. Rogers. I mean, this man can do it all. I have really not seen a bad performance from Tom Hanks, and this movie is no different. Of course, he kills it. What surprised me about this movie is that it actually went in a different direction than I was expecting. At first, I thought it was going to be a Mr. Rogers biopic, focusing more on who he was. Now, this does touch on who he was as a person. It does capture his spirit. But the real focus of this movie is Matthew Rice's character, his article that he's writing, and how this process of interviewing Mr. Rogers, getting to know him, makes him look inward on himself, really makes him think about his past, where he's come from, the trauma that he's faced. It really makes him think about who he is as a person, who he wants to be. And it was really just a deep dive into this character. So I actually enjoyed it for what it was. Let's get into it. So what worked? First and foremost, performances. Matthew Rice as Lloyd, Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. Everybody absolutely killed it in this movie. Tom Hanks really disappeared into this role. I mean, he got all the mannerisms down, even to how Mr. Rogers zips up his jacket when he's walking into the set, how he tossed one shoe over to the other hand. His just mannerisms in general, like this guy really nailed it. Matthew Rice, on the other hand, did a really great job of playing this pessimistic, snarky man who really doesn't see the point in interviewing Mr. Rogers, who to him is just some kids show host. He's not really on his radar. So getting this job was really kind of a shock for him, and it was like, why am I even doing this? But he does really get to see that Mr. Rogers is more than meets the eye, and I thought that journey was really well done. Also great performances from Susan Kelechi Watson, who plays Lloyd's wife, and Chris Cooper, who plays his dad, who is actually the source of his trauma. Both of these performances, I think, played well off of Lloyd and really challenged him in different ways. His dad, the source of his trauma, really challenged him to learn to forgive what has happened, accept what's happened, move forward, while his wife is really challenging him to make peace with his father. And I thought both of these performances were really important to the movie and really helped build the emotion and the development of Lloyd's character. Another thing I really liked about this movie is that they used Mr. Rogers' show as a storytelling device. In the beginning, you see Mr. Rogers almost as a host, as a narrator of sorts, introducing us to Lloyd, who is the focus of the movie. In between scenes, you also see the use of miniatures, which is something they did in the show also, like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. In the beginning of the show, you would see them dulling into Mr. Rogers' house, and it'd be really small. But in this movie, they also have scenes where if someone's traveling, you see the car they're in, you see the plane that they're taking off in, but they're little miniature versions. And I thought that was really cute, and it was also a great way to keep the audience intrigued and really keep the story moving in an interesting way. And last but not least, this was a very nostalgic movie, but it wasn't too much, you know what I mean? Sometimes, especially in this day and age, there are a lot of movies and shows that fully rely on nostalgia, and they have nothing else really going for them. They just remind you of what was better. But this movie, I think, reminds you of the great stuff from Mr. Rogers' legacy, from his show, but they do also have a lot of great storytelling and a lot of emotion and other things to go with it, so that the nostalgia is not the focus, but it's kind of the cherry on top, and I thought this was really well done. So if you were a fan of the show, then I definitely think you will enjoy this movie. The verdict. I think A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is solid. I think this movie did a great job of exploring Mr. Rogers, but also Lloyd's character, the trauma he had to deal with, his experience meeting someone like Mr. Rogers, very optimistic and very positive, how that changes him, how that causes him to look back at his own life. There are really great themes here, great performances, and it's very nostalgic. They also don't shy away from the harder parts. This is a very real movie, and it does really have the spirit of Mr. Rogers' show, which really touched on all subjects. He didn't shy away from talking about things that may have been hard for kids, like divorce or death. And I feel like this is something that both children and adults should watch, whether you're a fan of Mr. Rogers growing up or you're just learning about him now. Definitely check this one out. So have you seen Marriage Story and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood? What did you think? Tell me down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.